You have to do your due diligence to be able to buy the agencies, understand how the transition will work, create the transition with not only your staff, but with your customers.
If the client has a bad experience with the new agency, the first thing they're going to say is that new company's horrible.
Hi, everybody. It is Therese and Steven from Agency Performance Partners to do our blog banter on buying an existing insurance agency and how to minimize client deflection. So I have personally been in 2 insurance agencies that were bought out, but I've also been in those particular same agencies that bought another agency. So first, the agencies bought a bunch of agencies, and then they were bought out by another agency. Steven, what's your experience with agency buyouts? Have you been in those situations as well?
Actually, the very first agency I worked for got purchased by another agency. And then when I was managing a larger agency, we made a couple of purchases, then they sold. So multiple times in my career have I been on both sides of mergers and acquisitions.
And I am amazed at sometimes how the owners of these agencies try to hide it. So I've been in some that are like very open with staff and clients about selling the agency or purchasing an agency. And then I've been where they don't want anybody to know. And I think the worst thing you can do is try to hide it, because people can, they kind of, you're hushing and doing secrets. And so it's like, your staff and your clients can kind of figure out that something's going on, but they don't know what it is. And when a client all of a sudden just receives something in the mail that has an insurance company on it with their information and it doesn't match the company they're used to, I think that's a red flag for them to go, wait a minute, nobody told me anything, right? So we have to do our due diligence when we're talking about buying or selling, and we have to determine what the clientele is, where you are, because it also has to do with demographics, because some down-home local agencies, it would be very bad for them not to communicate with their clients, because those relationships are going to be different than like a big city life where they don't know the agent's name anyway. What would you say is the most important when you're doing due diligence, when you're looking at clients and how the client reaction will be? So what due diligence would you recommend when purchasing or selling your agency when it comes to the clients?
I think we really need to look at the market mix, like what is the clientele to begin with. So if it's a older demographic, sometimes they're a little bit more sensitive to the change. A lot of times the younger demographics, just like, hey, I got it. I do most of the stuff online. I think looking at the business mix, like is it commercial, personal, life, or benefit? Commercial can be a little bit more stable with the proper handoff. They're business people too, a lot of times, so they kind of get it. But preferred personal lines might be a little bit more volatile, whereas a non-standard book of auto, they're probably just like, hey, I still got insurance. I paid my bill. Great. Like, can I still make my payment or not? So we really have to look at what makes up the book and get deeper into it. Also looking at, is there a lot of excess and surplus, or is it all direct bill? I've been on both sides where we've notified clients and they freaked out, and then we didn't notify clients and they freaked out. It was actually less backlash from the clients when we didn't notify them and they just kind of found out. But we already were doing reviews and reaching out annually. And it was like that once that their next renewal came, they were getting a call saying, hey, we've partnered with the agency you were previously with, blah, blah, blah. And that went pretty well. But when we sent the letter, it was like thousands of phone calls. Well, it felt like it. I'm sure it was less than that. But like all the phone calls coming in, like, what happened? What happened? What's going on? So I think depending on the mix, it definitely is going to make a huge difference in how you handle the situation.
Well, and I think you used a very valuable word there. The word partner is very, very valuable and very important, because you don't want to make it look like, oh yeah, we just sold and there's nothing of the old agency. It's all the new agency. Everything's changed. The staff is all changed, which usually does not happen in an insurance agency. Thank goodness. Usually the old staff is kept and kind of just rolled into the bigger agency that purchased it. which is great for clients. But we do need to definitely, the word partner is great because we're partnering, we're working together, we're expanding, we're getting better. Definitely you want to look into, the clientele and the staff. And we can't pretend like the staff isn't involved either, because how the staff takes the purchase or how they take the agency being bought out is very detrimental in how the transition works. Because if the staff is not on board and the staff is not happy, they will project that out to their clients, which, you want to have a good attitude about it. And if you don't, what are the clients going to say? How are the clients going to feel about this purchase or this change or this transition? So you definitely want to make sure that your staff is on board. And that can be hard because, they may have to switch CRMs, management systems. They may have to, change their processes and procedures to the buying agent. So there's a lot of stuff in there. So what do you recommend is a way to build trust and credibility, not only with staff, but with customers?
I think that we just have to have that conversation. I've been on both ends where the staff found out day out. Like literally it was like, okay, we're going to bring in pizza and we're having lunch. Surprise.
We sold.
We sold. You're not part of us. Yay. And then there's other parts where there's other mergers and acquisitions I was a part of where the team was fully on board or they knew what was happening. And I think there's plus and minus to both. Like one agency, we let the team know and they all quit, like before the sale even happened. So then we were scrambling because we didn't want to go hire new staff to work a book that nobody knew. And we had to figure out how to staff it temporarily until the sale went through. It also dropped the price of the sale drastically because there was nobody to go with it or service it. Then on other points, it was we told the staff we were open and honest. The leadership or their owner came to them and said, hey, I'm in the process of having conversations about selling. I want to bring in the other agencies so you can get to know them a little bit more. And as the leadership team, we went to the office and had a meeting with the team. And then they had a whole 100,000 questions that didn't affect anything at the end of the day. But I think it kind of sometimes it can open a can of worms too. So building trust with the staff, I think has to come from the current owner as well as the new leadership team in a way that they can have an open conversation. But I think that a lot of times that they also think about all the what ifs, like what if this, or what if this, or what if this, and it can cause more stress during the transition. Clients, I think, are a little less affected overall. They just want to know that they're still getting good service. So as long as you're putting on your customer service face and you're hitting it from the beginning and you're not letting things fall through the cracks, most clients will stay in trust.
Well, and I think what we need to make this huge point about what I'm hearing is every single situation is distinct and different, and you have to treat it that way.
Right.
So you have to do your due diligence to be able to buy the agencies, understand how the transition will work, create the transition with not only your staff, but with your customers, determine what's best for them. So if an agency decides not to tell their customers because it may be better for them, and they may not even notice, because a lot of people don't even open their mail anymore. So half the time there's a possibility they won't notice. So it depends on the demographic, where you are, how your agency works, the clientele you have, the communication and the rapport building that your agency has done with your clientele. Because if your clientele is close to you, they've built a relationship and you've built a relationship with them, then it's probably best that you tell them. But if you haven't, and it's, a large book and people don't open their mail, they just kind of pay on automatic withdrawal, they may not even notice the difference in the name change. And a lot of agencies these days are keeping their names. They're not changing their names. A lot of big private equity companies, when they buy, they let the agency that they purchase choose whether they change the name and the logo. And they kind of do a phase transition where if they buy it today, they have a couple years before they change the name and transition over to that parent company that we call it. I think we need to look at, okay, we're getting more people, more staff members, more technology. So how can we relay that to basically enhancing the customer experience. So you're enhancing not only the customer experience, but you're enhancing the staff's experience too. So what would you say to staff and clients about enhancing the experience when an agency is purchased?
I think that there's a couple ways to look at it. The first thing we can do is just leave things as are, like you said, right? Like 6 months, a year, whatever, we're not going to change anything. We're just going to keep trucking the way it was, get the clients used to the new name. Like, thank you for calling APP, formerly Clover Insurance or whatever it was, right? Or thank you for calling Clover Insurance, now doing business with APP. You kind of blend it in, or you change the email signature. Like, you do things slowly. The other way is like rip the Band-Aid off. We're just going for it. But I think that we, on the acquiring side, have to have our ducks in a row and our processes and procedures set and have a solid onboarding process for the new team so that we don't end up with the issue of failing the customers, especially during the beginning of the transition. Because if the client has a bad experience with the new agency, the first thing they're going to say is that new company's horrible. Or my second favorite is they'll call, like, they haven't noticed their rate increase for 10 years. And suddenly the name changes. And now you people, when it was ABC agency, and now you people get it, and you just jack up my rate. And we have to be like, whoa, like, no, like, let's take a step back. So I think that we have to just be prepared for customers to be a little bit more questioning and unsure. So we have to be on the A game. We have to have solid process in place. We need to know what should happen. But again, I think every transition is different. If I have my top 100 customers, I'm hoping the current owner and or producer or whatever is going to introduce the new agency to those very top customers, all the VIP customers, with a phone call or whatever that may be. Whereas some of the more non-standard stuff, depending on the model of the agency.
Right. I think our agency assessment that we do with our clients is excellent for this, because you kind of want to have a top, and our assessment is kind of like if you think about being in a helicopter, looking down in the agency of everything that's going on. What are their processes and procedures? Does everybody have job descriptions? How is everybody feeling in the agency with a survey, an anonymous survey? So we can kind of get a feel of how the agency, how it runs, how the staff feels, and that helps kind of give us a score for the agency. So if we go into an office or an agency that they do the assessment and they have no processes and procedures, it's going to be really hard for them to purchase another agency, because you have this agency with no processes and procedures, and then you're buying this agency with no processes and procedures, and everybody's just doing it their own way. Like I said in another podcast we just did yesterday, I worked at an agency that bought several agencies, and they had sections of file cabinets. This is the section for this agent. So it was like A to Z of 5 huge file cabinets of all that paperwork. And then here's this agent. And then here's this agent. And there was like 6 or 7 different groups of file cabinets for different agents. And I'm like, what are you guys doing with these? And half of them weren't even in their management system. So nobody had gone through the files to put those into the management system to even know that the clients had business with them. That was a nightmare, because clients would call in and they couldn't find anything on the computer. And then they'd have to go to these old file cabinets to try to find the information, and it may have been there, may not have been there. So you have to get all those ducks in a row. So that agent bought like those 6 or 7 agencies, and then the agency I was with bought that one on top of it. So they basically purchased that mess. So you really have to know what you're doing, and then you have to have a plan. Like, if you have all these file cabinets of all these people that are not in the management system, you have to have somebody that's going to go through those files and enter that into the management system and scan stuff in.
That was me more than once.
Yes. So when the client calls in, you're not like, oh, I don't know who you are. You're not in my management system, because you don't want your client, you don't want to say to your clients, hey, we don't have you in our system. Because what is that? That's a red flag automatically. Like, what, I'm not in your system? You don't know anything about my insurance when my insurance is with you? We definitely need to make sure that when we're acquiring or when we're being purchased, that all the ducks are in a row. There's processes and procedures. And, if you're thinking about purchasing an agency and you don't have those processes and procedures, we can help with the agency assessment. It's a 2-year program normally. I think we do it in a 6-month as well, don't we, Stephen? Oh, we do it either 6-month or we do a 2-year program that you have to qualify for, not just for everybody. But I think getting your ducks in a row, having processes and procedures, knowing what you're buying or knowing what's, having everything structured when you sell it can be helpful for not only the staff, the owners, but can be very helpful for the clients as well. And you don't want to alienate the clients and kind of not tell them, but it depends on the relationship you have. And it depends on the book of business. Are they commercial clients? Are they personal lines clients? Are they just auto? Or are they non-standard? So all that stuff is important to remember when you are purchasing a book of business for your staff and your clients. Any final things you want to say about that, Stephen?
I think you made some good points of what we really need to do is take a look at what do we do good at? Like, what are we really good at? What is that agency really good at? Like, maybe they do something better than we do. And we really need to look at that. And I think that once we address both of those and kind of blend it together and really highlight to the customer, like, here's some new things that you didn't have before. Like, if there's a client portal or we're more tech advanced or we text or whatever that might be, really pointing out those things to the client, and the client may or may not be like, that's amazing, or I don't care.
Right.
What are the two? But at least we're also telling them why it's more of a benefit. Or we find out what the other agency did. Well, we're not changing this. Like, we know that you loved X, Y, and Z. We love that about that agency too. And we're actually implementing that here. So I think really just highlighting a lot of those key features of what is going to change and what isn't going to change will also really help smooth over not only the clients, but the employees as well.
Great comment. Yeah. So remember, you want to partner with the agency that you're either purchasing or if you're getting purchased, you want to make it a positive thing for your staff, make it exciting. And we hope this podcast has helped. If you guys have any questions, don't hesitate to contact us, agencyperformancepartners.com. Give us a call. We can always help with the assessment. And, a lot of agents look at, okay, that's a way to grow. I don't have to go out and do all these cold calls to get new business. That's the way to grow. But sometimes it can be a positive thing. Sometimes it can be a negative, just depending on what you get. So do your due diligence. We hope to see you in our next podcast. Thanks so much, guys. Have a great day.
Bye, guys.